What is going on, everybody? So today I wanted to talk about the possibility of an ROG Ally 2 releasing this year and just going through my thoughts on why I think it's okay if ASUS releases an ROG Ally 2. I mean, since Valve came out with a refresh of the Steam Deck with the Steam Deck OLED, I feel like if ASUS releases an ROG Ally 2 this year, it's kind of going to be a refresh and a correct of what the original ROG Ally was. And I'm pretty much going to list off 5 things that ROG Ally 2 can improve over the original ROG Ally. If it releases this year, I don't think they're going to make huge changes. I think they're going to keep the 1080p screen with the 120 Hz refresh rate. And I also think they're going to keep the Z1 Extreme CPU and possibly have a slightly more enhanced version of that. Because if they made some kind of communication or agreement with AMD that they're going to keep their Z1 Extreme CPUs in their ROG Ally lineup, then I can see just a slightly more enhanced version of that CPU, but basically the same CPU in the ROG Ally 2. I don't think they need to upgrade their CPU just yet, as it's still playing newer titles like Tekken 8 very well. But pretty much what I think they're going to change would be the RAM speed. I think they are going to have faster RAM in there, equivalent to the Legion Go's RAM, which will inevitably save more power and provide better performance. If ASUS includes better RAM, then that can make a lot of multitasking with lower TDP problems go away, as well as just having overall better performance for more titles with at least that one change. That would improve the ROG Ally's performance by a decent amount, but that's among the smallest changes that ASUS can make if they released an ROG Ally 2 this year. And I am surprised that ASUS is already considering an ROG Ally 2, but looking at the history of the handheld, it's not that surprising. There was one big issue that plagued the ROG Ally for some time, and a lot of people were talking about it as well as complaining about it, which made a lot of sense. And that is the SD card. If I didn't mention the SD card issue by now, that would be kind of weird. But if the ROG Ally 2 comes out, to make the handheld so much better, all they need to do is just change the positioning of the SD card with the volume buttons. Just make the SD card slot in the center of the system, opposed to the side, right next to the vent. That vent heats up the SD card apparently, which enables it to malfunction or to even kill SD cards. And I find that to be quite a big deal. And I know a lot of people complained and had issues with the ROG Ally's SD card, and I see that as ASUS's mess up and a problem that they could have avoided if they weren't so careless about where they will put an SD card slot, especially if it was next to an extremely hot vent. I think that is kind of a problematic location for an SD card, and it has proven to be a problematic location to put it. I feel that if an ROG Ally 2 was released, moving that SD card to a different location would increase the system's longevity tenfold easily. And that is no doubt the number one thing that ASUS needs to change if they release an ROG Ally 2 this year. They just need to switch the SD card slot positioning as soon as possible. And I know that requires an entire blueprint remodel of the system. I mean, all they really have to do is get rid of that XG mobile port and put an SD card slot. I feel like the main reason why this SD card slot has been being an issue is 100% because of ASUS's greed and self-promotion of their own useless hardware like the XG Mobile. I don't think anyone is going to buy a $2,000 mobile graphics card just because there's an obnoxious port on top of their handheld. I still haven't bought an XG Mobile, and I'm still holding out for possibly a third-party fix or hack or mod. And I feel like that's something they could also fix. The fact that ROG Ally is not compatible with any other eGPU except for the XG Mobile. They should change that immediately. They should make an option to use other third-party external GPUs, opposed to this ridiculously overpriced and underpowered XG Mobile. And I bet some higher up told the people working on the ROG Ally to include that port because it would make them a lot more money if people can buy their overpriced accessories like their controllers, headphones, and XG mobiles. And so they included the port, but they needed to move over the SD card slot. And because they moved over the SD card slot to a careless position, such as right next to the heat vent, they started having a crap ton of returns. And I feel like this is exclusively because of ASUS's greed and carelessness. I mean, ASUS has been known for being greedy and careless for most of their company's lifespan. So I'm not not really surprised that they would make some kind of lateral decision, such as replacing an SD card slot for their huge XG Mobile port, just to sell something that's most likely not selling at all, like the XG Mobile. So the next fix would just be to get rid of that stupid XG Mobile port and replace it with an SD card slot and a Thunderbolt 4, just like with the MSI Claw. I think adding a Thunderbolt 4 to the MSI Claw is going to make a lot of people choose that opposed to an ROG Ally, because it is kind of embarrassing to see that giant port on top of the ROG Ally without any kind of cover or anything. They just are showing all of their goods and they don't care because they want people to buy that XG Mobile. Well, guess what? No one's going to buy that shit. So replace the port with a Thunderbolt 4 so we can actually get true third-party eGPU support. I feel like they should definitely replace that port as soon as possible. Get that thing out of our faces because it has ruined a lot of people's experiences with the ROG Ally. If they want to still include that XG Mobile port along with a Thunderbolt 4 to make other eGPUs compatible with the ROG Ally, then that would be great. Just add more support for other eGPUs with the ROG Ally too, please. Now, the fourth thing I think that ROG Ally needs to fix is the analog sticks. Not because I think they feel a little wonky or too loose. Well, I do think they feel slightly too loose compared to something like the Steam Deck's analog sticks. But I think they should make the analog sticks Hall effect, just like with MSI Claw, just so it can also increase the longevity with this handheld. So we don't have to worry about stick drift, especially the fact that the analog sticks do grind against the edges of the ROG Ally, so it can be problematic even if you don't care about Hall effect sticks. So replacing the normal analog sticks for Hall effect would be a huge benefit if they decide to make a number 2. And hopefully they don't decide to actually make a number 2 and make ROG Ally 2 worse if they just double down on all of these mindless and careless changes that they made to the ROG Ally just to make it more affordable. Now, the last and major thing that the ROG Ally needs to fix, if they're not going to fix any of these other issues or shortcomings of the original ROG Ally, at least add a 53 watt-hour battery with it. Please, ASUS, add a bigger battery. If not, add an even bigger battery than 53 watt-hours. If it's going to weigh more, so be it. But somehow, just at least try to keep the weight down and also increase the battery life. If it has to be a 51 watt-hour battery, then so be it. But personally, that is the main thing that ASUS should focus on with the ROG Ally 2, as well as the SD card positioning. I haven't had any SD card issues. I have 22 SD cards specifically for the ROG Ally and counting, along with other emulation SD cards that I use on it, and I haven't gotten any kind of issues, maybe just one, possibly, but I also got an issue with the Steam Deck's SD card slot breaking one of the SD cards, and I only had 7 SD cards for that. I have 22 SD cards for the ROG Ally, and I haven't had any issues. I've been downloading games every single day while at work. I've been keeping the ROG Ally at turbo mode for hours on end using an SD card specifically, and nothing has happened. So for me personally, I didn't get any kind of issues with the SD card slot, but I do think that they should look into fixing the SD card slot and the battery life at least. But if they're not going to touch any of those other fixes, at least get a better battery, because with its many features with Armory Crate and all of its power saving options, I feel like having a better battery, if at least a 51 watt-hour battery, will help improve the battery for the ROG Ally by so much, and it will prove to make it an even more accessible handheld. And also, if there is a better option for a bigger battery, there might actually be third-party support to replace in the current ROG Ally. And ASUS has mentioned this before, that they will make the battery slightly more modular than the Steam Deck's battery, so you can take it out and replace it for a new one. And if they do replace it for a battery that's equivalent or the same size as the ROG Ally's current battery, then I wouldn't even need to get an ROG Ally 2. All I would need to do is order the new battery for my older ROG Ally's battery. And if I don't have to buy a $700 or $800 handheld simply for a better battery, then I could just replace it. And that would enable me to open up my ROG Ally. And I wouldn't only replace the battery at that point, I would replace the internal memory as well. It would give me a reason to replace my 500 gigabyte internal memory for a 2 terabyte, or even a 4 if that's available at the time. I would be absolutely stoked if they came out with a better battery for the ROG Ally 2, because I could just order a replacement for my current. But yeah, besides that change, I feel like the SD card location is the number one change that ASUS should focus on, because it has caused the most issues for their handheld device. But I really hope, and I would predict, that they are going to improve the battery life as well. well as the SD card position. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about these possible fixes that the ROG Ally 2 can make this year. And the vice president of ASUS mentioned that it might come out in 2024. So there is a high possibility that we will be getting an ROG Ally 2 this year, which is kind of hard to believe, but I'm assuming it's going to be at the end of the year or even during June. And that would be specifically a year after the ROG Ally has released, similar to the Steam Deck OLED, where it was a year and change after the initial and original Steam Deck's release. So it wouldn't be quite a big jump if they came out with another ROG Ally this year and the next. A refresher for a handheld device similar to a phone would make a lot of sense, especially if that handheld device is an entire PC. I feel like replacing PC parts has been relatively a normal thing for a long time. So coming out with a fresh ROG Ally model for the new year would only make a lot more sense, since there are a ton of CPUs out there as well as GPUs to replace for your current desktop PCs. It will be similar to replace your handheld or possibly parts for your handheld. And I really want ASUS to look into specifically replacing hardware for their current ROG Ally systems. So you can just replace specific parts like the battery, CPU, or even the RAM. If possible, you could just send it back to ASUS and you can have an improved ROG Ally. That would be great and similar and appropriate to desktop PCs. But yeah, that's about all I gotta say about the ROG Ally 2. I really do hope it comes out this year because it would make a lot of sense to PC gamers, and especially PC gamers that are handheld enthusiasts like me. But I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you have a good one. Later.